All right, Father, thank you for today. Thank you for this time to connect and to start to try to start conversations and maybe even relationships between generations so that we can learn from each other, we can grow together. Thank you for your Spirit's leading in these conversations. And I just praise you for Ty and the opportunity to connect with him as a new friend and the growth that we're seeing together. Thank you again for your faithfulness in all seasons of our lives. And we praise you for this time. In Jesus' name, amen. Any introductory comments, Ty? Or?
Not necessarily.
You're good. Go ahead.
Okay, not necessarily. Most everyone here has been introduced to the whole concept of why we're here, and we can touch on that a little later.
Great. All right, well, let's start. Ty, why don't you tell us just a little bit of your journey as an entrepreneur and just make some milestones along that way?
Sure. Entrepreneur, let me start with that word. Oftentimes, I think we have various meanings for that, or we think it's only in business opportunities and that sort of thing. I would say that it's not. I think an entrepreneur can be anywhere, and I would venture to guess that many in this room have a very strong entrepreneurial tendencies and skills. So I would start there. Secondly, and I would say even in my mind, and as I think back as a kid, there was always this creative element. There was always something I wanted to. I can remember playing in a sandbox and trying to get dirt to go a certain way, in different ways, and add up different trucks and beds and get it to follow, kind of like a marble machine. But I didn't own a marble machine, so we just used the dirt. So I remember those things. Other things that were significant, oftentimes when we were in a gathering, I would sit and listen to the adults. I still have not figured out or reconciled that why. What was it? Was I afraid of the kids? Was there different interests? What was it that spurred me to do that? Don't know. As an entrepreneur, I would say that I always had intrigue about other things. I was always inquisitive for two reasons. One, how could I do it? Two, it's a little bit arrogant. How might I do it better? It doesn't have to be arrogant, but it could be arrogant if I didn't steward that well. And so creatively kind of processing. So if I was in the audience out here today, I wouldn't be saying to myself, what other things could they do to make this better?
Yeah. So you're giving us a little bit of a window into what it's like to think like an entrepreneur. Maybe just, I want to get into that, but let's back up and just tell, what did you accomplish? What did you do? What, the sort of typical, hey, what do you do for a living?
Yeah.
Start there so we know kind of what we're talking about.
Sure. So back in 1990, I was close to 30 years old. Well, prior to that, I had gone to work for a very successful general contractor and developer. And a brief story of that, I begged for a job, said, you don't even have to pay me, just let me hang out for 2 weeks. I just want to be here, etc. And he goes, well, I don't really need anyone now, but let's see. So I called him every week. I think it was for 8 weeks. Somewhere I have this story written down so I'd have it accurate, but I don't know that it matters that it's accurate. I'm still just going to tell the story.
Sure.
That's what entrepreneurs do. They just go for it. That's the risk involved. So I kept begging. I'd call him every week. Finally he says, okay, we need you. He hired me. I was there 8 years. I ended up sitting right outside his office. I don't know if that was pure happenstance or what the situation was, but I just tried to glean what I could in and do whatever I could to make that work. He was an incredible business entrepreneur, probably one of the most astute business people I've ever associated with. So that was huge in my formation in addition to my early childhood.
Yeah. So did you end up building houses? Did you end up developing land?
So after I was there a period of time, I went in and said, hey, don't fire me, but this is what I want to do. I said, I'm thinking of moving to Prescott.
We're going to take turns.
I'm thinking of moving to Prescott. This is what I know about it. I'm not ready to lose my job, but maybe that'll happen. What are your thoughts? And he said, okay, well, he and I were going to fly on this business trip the next day, trying to woo a client back to Phoenix to build some office buildings. Because Phoenix is dominantly where I grew up, but I think I lived through college 18 different homes. It was a wild little chase. So I took this stack of stuff that I've been studying about Prescott. What could be developed, what could happen, et cetera. Because back in the late 80s, economically, things were rough. It's kind of a little bit reminiscent of 8 to 10 years ago. So anyway, that started this Prescott idea. He was very gracious. We came up here. We had an 18-year run. It was great, but things began to change.
Yeah. So you developed homes in Prescott?
Yeah,
Like
dominantly
subdivisions?
subdivisions. Yeah, I built some homes. I didn't love being a home builder.
Right.
That's like trying to build a piano out in the wilderness. It just doesn't work well, and you'll never get it right. So that was rough. But we did build some homes. We built a lot of subdivisions, both residential, commercial, buildings, developed land. That's a lot of what it was.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to pause here and throw it back out to you guys. There's an interesting part of this story that I think I'd love for you guys as the mentors in the audience to share with the students. This description of being hungry, this description of looking hard at somebody else who was doing something and learning from them, or this idea of like going outside the box and saying, how can I do this differently? Do you have part of that in your story that you want to share with the students? Go ahead and mention that around the discussion. We'll give you 2 minutes to talk. It's a little awkward, but this is how we do it. So talk to a student around you and share with them a little bit of your hunger and that bit of like watching somebody else and going, I think I want to do that. That gets kind of that starting going in you, in your path. Okay? And if we have some new folks here, then some students are going to come join you. All right, ready? Go ahead. Thank you. Welcome. Let's continue on.
Okay.
So Ty, when did you first walk us through the process of what it was like to realize you wanted to do your own thing. You wanted to start a business. Did that happen unexpectedly? Did you dream about it for a long time? I mean, you're a little boy moving dirt around, and you're like, hey, maybe I'll move dirt around. How did that work for you?
I think influences in my life had an entrepreneurial spirit, but I would say in a different way than probably I took it on. So I think there's a difference between dreaming and just dreaming out there that can't really be a reality and dreaming what could really happen. So there's those that are so far-fetched, like, am I going to be the next Elon Musk? Absolutely not. Could I maybe develop something technologically oriented? Maybe. Could I one day buy a piece of dirt, divide it into 4, improve it, and sell it? And actually, my 2 children are in the audience, and they might laugh at this, because as we would drive, we would do word problems. They'd say, and my daughter loved them, and my son would do like 1, and then he was done with it. But, you know, we'd go through that same exact scenario. Hey, if you bought this, what would you do with it? Well, you could divide it into this many, then we'd go into improvements. Then we would sell it for a certain price. How much did you make? How much did you pay in taxes? What did it cost you to do these elements? And as a kid, that would go through my mind, so being that's me, that's what I ended up probably somewhat imparting to them. And I don't know exactly where I got all that, but that just was how I grew up.
Yeah. So when you think back to like your dad, what was that like in your relationship with him? Was that part of that formative experience for you, or your family of origin? What was that like for you?
Dominantly, my family of origin was in education. My dad was never probably settled in that, so he always had these entrepreneurial dreams that I don't think really ever got realized. And so that, even knowing that they weren't realized or really just even thought out well enough or executed, settled with me also that there's a certain amount of discipline, there's a certain amount of tenacity, you have to stick to it. Risk wasn't an issue. He was willing to take the risk. I took some risks. So there were some great elements I saw there, but there was also some, especially as I got older, I realized that I'll use the word inherited, because I think we inherit it just in our genes, but I think we also inherit things through the environment in which we exist. And we carry those forward. And sometimes we don't see those till later on in life. And I think that's one of the reasons that even this concept is important to me, because I think there's opportunities where we interact. have conversation, learn from another's experience. And oftentimes we gain into those experiences thinking all the positives. Well, there's also a positive in understanding what we would call the shadow side, the not so positive aspects of that style.
Yeah, I want to get to that, but before we do, I want to touch on, you mentioned dreams. When you had the kind of, when you were going through college or when you were at this stage of life in high school, at the very end, these guys are at their very end of high school, did you have a dream in your heart at that time? Or did that dream develop over time? Or was it just like one step that, like, did you see yourself doing what you ended up doing?
Yes, probably. And I would say the driving force of that, I'm going to use a different term, but we actually use it on the paper that they have. The narration, the voices that I heard in life were all about the Western worldview. How much money could I make? If I made enough money, how could I amass resources, wealth, accomplishments? In there, hidden at the time I didn't realize, was also the accolades. Those drove me, that, hey, good job, Ty, because, and I've had a few people describe me now later in life, and one person said, you have a bit of lack. I said, okay, what's a bit of lack? There's always this little thing inside me that says, I'm not complete. I'm gonna have to press harder. I'm gonna have to take bigger risks. I'm gonna have to do whatever to achieve in this world that I thought guided everything that there is, and that is make money, be successful, have everyone pay attention to you, look at you, Ty.
So you were driven quite a bit by that. It wasn't necessarily healthy in terms of that drive from the beginning.
Yeah, not necessarily healthy, but in hindsight, a big shadow.
Yeah.
So instead of living in the brilliance and brightness that's offered to each of us, I lived in the shadow of a different, somewhat oppressive effort.
Yeah. So there was like a motivation to prove yourself in many ways.
Yeah, and a lot of people, some people refer to this as father wounds or whatever it is we have, and I never thought I had a father wound most of my life.
Yeah.
But I would say there was that sense in me that says, yeah, you're not enough.
Yeah.
You lack a self-worth. Now, the average person would never see that.
Right.
Because I'm going to shield that, and I'm going to show you through my personality, my liveliness, how I throw the feathers and the dust in the air, like an entrepreneur would, right?
Yeah.
So that all gets hidden there, but it's there. And again, I didn't realize it till a lot further along.
So as that story began to unfold, how did it become clear to you that was your motivation in a way that wasn't good?
Okay, this is the hard part of the story. So I had a run here of like 18 years, meaning in business with a partner. I forget, we developed like 10 residential subdivisions, 4 to 6 commercial subdivisions. At the time, I would say I arrived.
Would we know any of those subdivisions?
Yeah, you would.
Do you mind mentioning a few?
The Crossings, Eagle Ridge, Southview, Foothills, Center Point project.
So probably somewhere where you guys live, he developed a subdivision, right? So you did a lot of that for Prescott.
Yeah, and the actual underlying property owner of this, that you bought this from,
Yes.
he and I had a fairly long relationship that actually led to all this being purchased because my former partners who coordinated all this after I got out.
Yeah.
So to answer your question,
So the motivation,
the motivation was my marriage was in a crisis.
Mm.
And that's hard. That's hard to say.
Yeah.
But it's good.
Yeah.
God used those hard things to redeem.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's hard to speak about. It's hard to walk through. It's hard to know, wow. And this didn't just happen overnight. I mean, the crisis happened, but the healing didn't happen overnight. The healing's still happening, obviously.
Yeah.
So at some point, it was evident, and through Danette, my wife's grace, she pointed us out. She wanted out. She said, this is your life. This This is your top thing. This is what you
Yeah.
live for. This is what you dream for.
Yeah,
And I would have argued that, and I did argue it for years,
yeah,
but it's right. And so the answer or response to that is that I inflicted tremendous amount of hurt upon her
yeah,
by not having a marriage that, as I think they are designed, as I understand they are designed today. Mine was, as I viewed it in the Western world,
Yeah.
you know, you have one, it's for your benefit.
yeah,
I don't even know how to describe it all, but it was definitely wrong.
yeah. So you're at the height of your success, but that motivation gets untangled because things stop working in your relationship with your wife. Things come to a head, and that kind of smacks you in the face.
Well, I had a choice.
Yeah,
I had a choice, and she didn't put an ultimatum, but I knew I had a choice, and so we got out.
so you just dropped business altogether. to
Pretty
save the
much,
marriage.
had to unravel it,
Yeah,
which sounds easy, but I'll tell you what, it takes at least
Sure.
half as long to unravel as it did as you were in it.
right.
And there's lots of ramifications. Everyone doesn't understand. You don't really explain it to everyone because you don't even understand. I do now, and I
Right.
can explain it now, but it doesn't do justice to the hurt that was inflicted by not making Danette second only to God.
Yeah,
So there was Danette, there's my projects, there's other people, there's my self-ego.
yeah,
It floated in there bigger than you can imagine.
yeah,
Bigger than I even want to imagine or think about, honestly.
yeah,
And that ended up driving me to other things. And it's still a healing journey. And I'm not convinced that all of life isn't a healing journey.
sure.
But when you talk about it for yourself, there's still internal pain and anxiety that comes up.
All right. Well, let's pause there for a minute. I want to ask you guys in the audience, you don't have to go to the same level of vulnerability, obviously, that Ty is willing to go. He's been thinking about this for a few years now. But would you share with the students around you, when you think about your traveling through the beginning of your business, the beginning of your endeavor, what motivated you? Let's talk about motivation. And maybe how has that changed now that you're further in? As Ty's mentioning, his motives became more clear to him. So would you be willing to share your motivations for what you've done and maybe how that's shifted? We'll give you 2 or 3 minutes to talk to the high schoolers around you. All right, let's continue on. So Ty, thank you for being willing to share. Really, I mean, there's not very many people who have the success and then are willing to share kind of that shadow side, to use your phrase. And I know it's been a big part of your journey, and you even call yourself a recovering entrepreneur, right? Like,
Yeah, I use that phrase,
addiction.
you know, the entrepreneur defines a lot of my skill set. The recovering, not recovered, recovering just talks about the tendencies, and it's not just entrepreneurship, it can be anything. Having studied a bit about one, entrepreneurship and its foundation, 2, the addictive nature of entrepreneurship, there's many pieces that would say everyone's an addict. I mean, come on. No, everyone's an addict. So you read the first one, you go, okay, I hear what this guy's saying. Then you read another one, you go, well, that one even pointed out to either addicted to, addicted from, addicted to people that have it. Wow. And they list hundreds of items. And that's when you start to go, this is real. So I use the word attachment, because for me, attachment's easier. I'd rather say I was excessively attached to something instead of saying I'm addicted to or whatever, because addiction often has a few elements in it and then we throw everything else out. Attachment opens it up and we can think more clearly about our attachments.
Yeah, that's good. That resonates with one of the concepts we use at Trinity. Is we talk a lot about ordered love. And so you have a disordered love when things are out of order. You love certain things more than you should and love certain things less than you should. So
that's really good, because that points out to there is a proper design.
There's a proper order, yeah.
Yes, there's a proper order, and that speaks to the narration part that I touched on earlier.
Yeah.
I lived out of what I thought was the right order.
Right.
And
probably look that way to a lot of people. Like, this is success. This
Oh.
is Scott's family. He's
Oh,
got
yeah,
his
you know,
house.
they thought I had the golden touch, I had whatever.
2.4 kids, a
Oh, yeah, well, just
white
two,
picket
but,
fence, a dog.
yeah, and, but yeah, you get the point.
Yeah.
And it was just, yeah, and you know what? I thrived on that.
Yeah.
I thrived, that's not the right word. I loved hearing that.
Yeah,
That's the accolades, that's
Yeah.
some of what drove me.
yeah. Oh, that's interesting. So you mentioned, I know in recovery circles, there's often a rock bottom. And you mentioned that in terms of having this moment where you were going to lose your marriage, you were facing a real challenge. What, maybe take us back to that moment. Were there mentors there? Was God there with you in that desert, in that difficulty? What was going on in terms of what pulled you through that?
Was God there? Absolutely. Did I draw to Him, turn to Him, listen to Him? Marginally. Because I had other gods. I had another voice speaking to me. And guess what? I went at it. Isn't that cute? So when you win at it, when you fall in this other line and you win at it, very few people can speak into your life. But thank God for Danette. She spoke into my life. It wasn't easy, and it's still not easy, because even when she would encourage me or suggest something today, my defensiveness riles up. You know, look at me, I'm pretty sharp. I got this figured out. I can, you know, and that's not where I'm supposed to be. And truly, my biggest regret is not stewarding that relationship right, not understanding the gift God gave me in Danette, in my marriage, in her skill set, and lastly, not protecting her, which is my designed job first and foremost. Instead, I promoted myself. There are all these other things that are really, can be congratulatory, Ty.
And so what would you say to students who, most of them haven't had like a car wreck in their life yet? I shouldn't say the word yet, sorry guys. But failure is a part of our path, right? And anyone who's succeeded at anything will say failure is a part of that. It's also the very thing that this generation is most afraid of. And so what would you say to them now, how they should think about failure in their journey?
Okay, remind me of this failure question, because I didn't touch on part of your last question. That was
okay.
mentors.
Okay, yeah.
So I mentioned earlier I had a mentor from the business financial point of view. And you know him, and he's very active, and he's a very good businessman. When you and I met 5 years ago, I went back and looked up the date in our text or our email thread. I'm like, 5 years ago, that's wild. And I didn't have an answer of like what I thought could help young people as they transition to the next phase. And then literally, God somehow put this on my mind in the last year. I think it was 6-8 months ago. God uses His people to reach His people, simply put. And I realized there's a lack of relationship, mentorship, not just to go be rich. Not just which one of these would you buy, which one of that would you look at, how do you act like you're powerful and smart and popular, but to what is the real design by the Creator. And I think that faith one was not evident. And I can't say no one showed up. They might have. I felt like I was looking, but I don't know if my mind was already made up, especially when I won. When I was a winner in that other narration, you kind of, this was a tag onto my life.
Yeah.
And don't let it influence where I'm winning. So that was that one. Now we go back to failure.
Well, hold on. So you're saying that there was a lack of mentors, and that's part of what's motivating you now to bring mentorship forward.
Yes.
Okay.
And I grew up in a time where relationally things were different.
Yeah.
We didn't have phones that were false
Yeah.
methods of communication, false methods of relationship. It was a little more real.
Yeah.
But there was that it was at a peak of that Western world view of accomplishment, and we know all this, and if we break it down to its smallest component, look, we put a man on the moon, someday there'll be this device that you can talk to anyone in the world that fast.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up in that, but we have lost that ability to interact and lost the value of understanding that, the importance of those interactions.
Yeah, thank you. You've just given me justification for how I've spent the last week in my class talking about technological discipleship with my students. So it's good. So yeah, let's take up that question about failure. How you've experienced the high and you've experienced the low. What would you say to students who are either, maybe they've had some of that, right? But there's still more ahead. How should they think about failure in their journey?
I think almost any seasoned individual would tell you they learn the most from the hard times. I love in the midst of the high times celebrating them and enjoying all that, but I definitely learn most in the hard times. And even in additional to that, the hard times are the hard ones to talk about. I'm not talking about someone else's hard time. I'm talking about the time, failure, we use that word. And we all view failure in our culture negatively. But it's very, very valuable. And so I even there, I think that we have to think about how are we stewarding our failure? And that's been a challenge for me for many, many years, At first I want to go, okay, acknowledge it, let it go away. But don't make changes. No, I need to make changes. I need to make changes about where my marriage is in relationship to everything else I do. And then and you say, okay, well, gosh, you found out, so why don't you, that's cool, just do it. Wait, I got to change a pattern of plus or minus 50 years to do that. That's not easy. And you still need other people in our lives that they're kind of a mirror, but there's different kinds of mirrors. There's mirrors that are so bright you don't even, how about the one that magnifies everything? You ever looked at yourself in a magnifying one and go, holy smokes, is that bad? So you want someone that reflects it back in a way that you can take it. I think that's the value of proper mentorship. I haven't studied mentorship yet. I studied some other stuff, as it just so happens, but not truly how to mentor, be a mentor, etc.
Yeah. As mentors out there, potential mentors, non-high schoolers in the room, how many of you would raise your hand and say, I have experienced a valuable failure in my story? Yeah, every single one of you, right? So,
Amen.
And
Thank goodness I'm not alone sitting here.
I'm imagining that that's something you want to speak into for a minute. So we're going to give you a couple minutes if you want to share. Don't have to go into the great detail if you don't want to, but maybe even if you just want to share with the student how they should be thinking about failure. Whether you want to talk about yours or not, that's fine. Again, vulnerability is a choice, so we're not pushing you. But answer the student's question, how should I think about failure? Because a lot of them are very afraid of failure. Students, how many of you are afraid of failure? Okay, there we go. You see how those hands went like this? All right, whereas the mentors are like, I failed! That's experience, right? So, all right, let's give you a couple minutes to talk about failure as part of the journey. All right, come on back. Come on back. I know, I want to ask a student if they would just, if one of you students would just stand and say, this is what I heard and understand about failure a little differently now. Anybody want to say something they heard the mentor say, or the new friend say about failure? Anybody want to? Come on, you can do it. Thank you, Emily. Stand. Turn around, face them.
You said it's not like about the destination, it's like about the journey, and who you bring along with you is as much as important of like where you're going to end up.
Good, thank you. Any other brave student want to share a tidbit that you heard about failure? Laura? Go ahead, Stan.
failure, like God used it to bring about something better than what happened before. So even though there was a time of like hardship, there was better things to come.
Good. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So Ty, let's pick up there. Redemptive realities that you gain from that. What are some of the things that are the hope of going through something hard that you pick up from that you glean from those lessons?
What was your name?
Alora?
Alora just, technologically challenged also. Alora just commented about, I don't know if she said the hope or something, but it was shared with me recently. It's the but God component. So we may go through some, oh man, that was brutal and that was ugly and you failed and da-da-da. And you stop and you say, but God. God can redeem it all. Now, I say that, they're easy words, you hear it a lot. Then you got to go live into that. So living into that, God can redeem it, or God will redeem it if we allow whatever, or however we want to land on that. That's hard to live into, because oftentimes we sit in that failure. We sit in that. We are living under a condemnation that's not by God. We live under, oftentimes, a lot of our own self-condemnation that gets applied. And I'll go back, I talked about shadow side earlier. Well, when things are in the crevices of our mind, it's not good. So we need that other person, hopefully, that's God-centered to air it out with, put it in the light. They speak to these things. And God is not idle. God is always moving. So I now term that as you described. And I always break things down to like, if I can get down to 2 words and keep it simple, it really helps a guy like me. So I just call it, but God. All this happened. It was terrible. But God. And that redeeming portion, it's to His glory. Now, I hope I don't attempt to steal it. I can't steal His glory. But I'll tell you what, I'm pretty good at attempting it quite often. Even sitting here, it makes me think about it.
Yeah, that grace that comes in. I believe down to my toes the importance of helping students understand that we teach truth, but you got to go out and test it. And it's okay for you to test it. It's okay for you to, and so going through those very difficult failures, those very difficult things where you try something, it actually makes you really believe the truth of but God. Because you can know it, but once you've experienced it, once you walk through that, it becomes very different. So how does that belief of the redemptive value of difficulties and that the but God, how does that change how we should think about risk? Because I know that's a big part of everybody who starts something, what they're wrestling with is risk. And so how should we think about risk differently as a result of those experiences?
Right. That's a good question. And we always think risk is just like financial risk. Or maybe, I'll call it personality risk or a reputational risk or something. But I think risk comes in a lot of different forms. And I think risk can be good. And I think we have to walk up to that edge a little bit. And we all have a different tolerance for it. In relating to this group, though, for the young people, I would say risk it. Step out. Seek others. But also consider who you're seeking. What it is you think you may glean from them. I sought business and financial mentors. I did not, with the same effort and heart, seek life, faith. There's probably some other words in there. You can come up with your own mentors. And so if I can change that with these young people and somehow there is a seed planted or a previous thought watered by this interaction that causes them to risk something, step out, seek another, be vulnerable in some way, then that but God component becomes reality.
Yeah.
That's when I say, thank you, God, for walking through all this.
That's great. That's great. Let me wrap up with this question, and then we're going to open it up and let you guys ask some questions. Ty, what's next for you? What is God doing in your life now, and what's next? You've done the house building and the building of life a certain way. You've now started to shift in another direction to grandpa and different things. So what's next for you? What's going on in that entrepreneur risk mind of yours?
That's so true. So a little bit of the story was, I succeeded in business, and I'll put the parentheses, according to the world. When I got out of that, I did several other things. And I'll probably end with that sentence that we all like, and I just remembered that, or think we ought to use. So then I went and I worked for a church as an executive pastor. We opened up a coffee shop for the community, really, not as a money-making venture, but to create conversation. I went on and got a master's in theology, which I am not a great student by any sense. I don't know if I graduated in the top 50% of my class in high school. I'm pretty sure I didn't. I'm right at that mark. I don't remember if I was a little above or below, and oh well. I had a degree in finance, business, went and got a master's in theology, finished that. That was really good because it taught me about, there's an agency I've been asked to carry, and that's his agency that he offered me. So I started learning about that, diving in. Then I decided I'm going to keep seeing about school. Well, I got rejected from the first place. I wasn't smart enough for languages and all that stuff. That's not my style. So I took on another terminal degree program at another school that is much more experiential, and that fit for me. The result of that effort was Seeds and Water, that we're here for. I had no idea it was going to, it seems like it's hit a good spot. It was received better than I had really even envisioned, but I felt like it was important. And a lot of that credit to you and credit to Trinity Christian School. But my skill set is not always managing something. I call myself a C plus B manager, but I love to create. And I'm learning more and more of that. So next, I would love to see other people come in and carry some of what we're doing in Seeds and Water, and maybe that can happen in other places. If this is good, I hope that it's transferable otherwise. But for me personally, and Danette and I have been talking about it, through our journey, like if I was asked to be a mentor, since I've gone through some of this educational process, I think I have a few things to offer. I don't want to sound like I definitely don't have it figured out, but I realized, wow, we have all these people here, young people, elders, modern elders, we're going to call them.
Modern elders, yes.
But do they know the topics and what they want to cover, what they might want to impart or not? So I would love to start putting together resources, material, thoughts about how do we walk with young people to their benefit, not just to our own? How do we listen properly? As we've all noticed today, you're great at asking these questions. How do we learn to ask good questions? Then how do we hold tight long enough to listen? And then there's another line, I may have shared it last time we were visiting, that a person that's very familiar in recovery told me. He said, vulnerability is a magnet. I'm like, okay, let me comprehend this. Now it just flows out of my mouth, but I had to think about it. Because when we're vulnerable, we're actually bringing to mind for each person ways in which they probably want to grow, or know they need to grow, or know there's been hurt or will be hurt. So bringing some of those components in some form or fashion that helps these groups interact and gain and glean from what God's doing is really what's on. And I'm hoping that Danette and I can do it together. We're significantly different. I'm I'm gonna throw it against the wall and something might stick, and I think that's a win. She's more like, she'll get it right and better. And some people will relate to hers, and some people will relate to my messy style. So if we can parallel do that, that excites me. And you know, it's everything I can do to hold my own excitement, because as an entrepreneur, that gets me going. And it's risky. I can't write. I've never been a writer. Are you kidding me? I was lucky to get through all these school journeys I took.
Well, I want to thank you for meeting today, for sharing your story, for getting this going, for inviting us into that story as we kind of wrap up here. But I just want to put out the invitation to you guys. Part of what we're trying to do is create opportunities for you to connect with some people, different generations, both the modern elders. I keep calling them people who either have gray hair or will sooner than you. But the students, if you're hungry for that. But so I just want to encourage you to have some time to do that. But we're going to pause and give you another minute to just connect with the person. If there's an opportunity to make some contact, that's fine. But then we'd like to ask Ty a few questions, so if you can be thinking of a question or two as well. All right? So we'll give them another minute to connect with the person next to you, and just make sure you get a chance to do that. All right. So let's. Do we have any questions for Ty? We'll open it up for a few questions.
Don't be afraid of, I got unmuted.
Don't be afraid to ask questions. They can be probing, they can be whatever, because, and if I don't like or want to answer the question, I'll say, why don't we visit you and I a little later? But those questions are good.
All right, so we'll give
risk it.
give an opportunity to students first, and then you'll have the students' questions. Andy?
So for me, personally, I want to go into welding and then maybe eventually have my own welding company. So my question is, like, what does the timeline look like from learning something to becoming a business owner? And like, how do you accomplish that?
Great question.
It is a very good question, definitely. And I would say it's such a good question, there's not really an answer. Because it could be anywhere from really quick to a whole lot longer than you want it to be. So I think there's some connections that could be made, and I know of one that could be made, and Mrs. Orr, Miss Orr probably does also. Some very dominant players in that business here locally, and you may know of them. And if you don't, I'd be glad to make that connection. Lastly, I would say, make sure God's in that question. I could give you an answer, anyone else here could, whoever you might get an internship, that's great. But seek Him, tell Him what you desire, know that He has it and you, and then trust Him. And it will come through. It might take a lot longer than you think. As a matter of fact, I would almost bet on it. Because as a young person, everything takes a little longer than we want it to. But also, take the risk. Step out there. That's where that risk conversation. Get the introduction. Say who you are. Hey, if I can hang out and just watch you for a day, then you decide if I have any value to pick up those scraps for you or not. Just take the risk.
Yeah, I want to highlight what you're saying there is that don't be afraid to start at the bottom. Don't be afraid to serve until somebody sees that value and keep pushing. But you have a long period of growing into something before you can start running it, if that makes sense. So, good. Other question?
So I guess my question would be, like, how do you balance like not loving money but knowing that you need to save enough money to have a house and a car and all this stuff, but like you want to just be good at money but not want to money?
Great question again. Yeah. And I'm not here to take away the value of making a good living, saving, except those are very, very important. The key, I think, oftentimes is the priority in which we give everything. That priority can quickly get distorted. by many factors. Peer pressure, wrong mentors, attachments we have that we may not recognize that we have. So everything that's created, including money, is good. It's just where we put it in relation to where we put God. And hopefully, even as I talked about somehow creating resources for people to help mentorship, that would be a key component that's brought forth often. Now, you guys may hear that all the time because you're here at a place where your priorities are put out there and it's displayed for you in proper priority, in proper form. Then there's not a perfect answer. Hence, why you want to be in relationship and walk with others. And it's okay, Mr. Maestri said last week, I'm not going to quote him exactly, but like he had a collection of people that could be mentors. That's very valuable. So seek many out. Different ones have different things they can offer you. In the Bible, I don't remember where it is, but it says to seek counsel. So I really think that's the key. And then they get to know you, because for you it may be different than it is for you or her. So seek it for you, take it in for you, and most of all, seek and trust God in it. That's not easy, at least not for me.
Other question?
I don't have a question, but I have a statement because I've known Ty for 30 years. We recently started going to a different church and not knowing that his son has renewed our Christian faith, not even knowing it was Ty's son. And just thank you, Danette, for giving us him.
And thank God, because, yeah, we got to steward it, but God gets the glory, because He's doing all that. And not just in spite of us, but even allowing us to participate in it. And that's one of those high times we want to celebrate. That's cool. That's fun. That's great. Thank you.
We have time for one more question.
So this idea of calling that's found in Scripture, where does that show up in your story?
That is a great question. You know, I took one of the courses I had a few years back was called personal assessment. And so you kind of start to discern your calling out of it. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna see if I can really quickly pull this up, because I think I sent it to myself today going, I ought to have that more readily available to myself. Darn it, but I don't see. Oh, I know where it is. See? You guys will learn to.
Drew is dying.
Drew's
Drew's like, what is happening right now?
Oh, I can't find it. Anyway, it talked about, I don't want Drew to die any longer. This is tough, yeah. You know, we do, as a parent, sometimes you love embarrassing your kids. And they don't love it, but just we do it. So anyway, I had a personal learning community as I was working on a doctorate. And they try to learn about you. And some of the gist of that was, you know, you see whole things, Ty, not just a component. You like to share those things and not just hold them. Not only do you like to share them, but you like to bring others along with you. Oh, I can see what things can be. That's what the line was. So some of that was very reflective of me. And even another guy, he had all sorts of vernacular, and he sent me this text one day. It's like, I see you. He's the one that said I had a bit of lack. So I asked him one day, what's bit of lack? And he goes, I sent that to you? Yeah, but I'd kind of like to understand. But I really knew it. Just want to make sure I really knew it. And I think even that bit of lack is associated to my calling. Because I think there's a lot of people, I don't know this, but I think there's a lot of people that have a sense of a bit of lack in whatever it might be. And so coming alongside them and saying, hey, you are loved. Yes, by us, but even more importantly, by God. And you were created by Him. and walk in how you were created. And if you didn't do something right, acknowledge it, own it, confess it, all sorts of words. And do what you can to learn from it and give him the glory in it. So I hope that answers the question a little. And I think that's where even mentorship, just like my personal learning community, can help reflect that back when they're the proper device to reflect it back.
All right, well, we're going to close here. The students have another 45 minutes. So the modern elders, I don't like that term, I'll have to come up with something else.
Please do.
Please.
Modern elders, if you would stick around, what I'd like to ask you to do is if you would ask the students that you've been talking to 2 probing questions that you think would be helpful to them in their journey right now. I've found that a big part of my story has been starting with questions. Just a question, I collect questions, I love questions. And so I just wondered if you would just ask a probing question or 2 of some students around you, if you can stick around. If you need to go, no problem, but if you can stick around, do that. And I'm going to close this in prayer and let you guys just fellowship after that.
Only one thing, if we're done, I wanted to say, take a risk, students, and fellow whatever we call ourselves. No hair, gray hair, some hair, whatever. Take a risk, all of us, and reach out and get in relationship. That's what the real design is, for us to be in relationship. And really what that is, if you look at all the commandments, the ultimate one is love. Getting in a relationship, that is love. So I really challenge you, take the risk, get into it. And lastly, we try to end with this statement, and I think we're ending. So, if you heard me right, I've been a businessman, I've been a contractor, real estate developer, real estate agent, I guess, I had a license. I was executive pastor at a church, we owned a coffee shop. Original degree, finance, went on and got one in what we call narrative theology, which is the whole biblical grand story, which many of us didn't know when we were young. And then went on to study transformational leadership, of which this is a result. So now you know a little bit about me. And personally, I've had some great high times. Especially in the moment I thought they were great, now they're marginal. And I've had some tough times. And I learned through them, and I'll be glad to share those with you too. Mainly in hopes that you wouldn't have to repeat it like I did, at least the same way, that this would help you hop, skip, and maybe jump over some of those hard times, at least the ones that can be devastating to not just you but others. So that's who I am. I'm going to give you a phone number. You can get it otherwise also, 928-710-8899. That's my number. Text me, do whatever. Come ask me if you need me to repeat it, but I'd be glad to meet with anyone. And it's not that you need to meet with me, but maybe I can direct you if someone has a similar story or what you're interested in. I'd love to be able to do that too. Thank you.
All right, let's pray. Father, thank you for this time. Thank you for the way that you work through generations. And I pray that we can continue to do the work of recovering mentorship, recovering discipleship, recovering experienced individuals looking back at those who are on their way up and helping and guiding. And so, and young people looking for wisdom from those who are older than them rather than just looking at each other. And ultimately help us all to look to you. Thank you for the but God reality that was mentioned today. In Jesus' name, amen.